The Object 279E and of course the Chieftain are far too broken, which is why Wargaming went ahead and pretended to nerf them, but they left one absolutely disgusting vehicle still in the game, so good as well, and that is of course the Object 260. And what exactly makes the Object 260 so overpowered and disgusting? Well, these gameplays are going to showcase exactly that, and hopefully be a good one for you guys to see what this tank is all about and whether it's worth spending your time to be able to complete the missions, to be able to unlock this vehicle for yourself. Quick answer is absolutely, and we're going to see why. So first things first, you're seeing a map on, which is of course steps, and we're going to be seeing a result absolutely crazy, how this guy manages to secure a flank basically on his own against multiple opponents without really being punished a whole lot, and then come in with an absolutely clutch game that will hopefully showcase the top end of this game, even if it isn't the highest damage that has ever been performed in this vehicle. What exactly makes the Object 260 absolutely disgusting? Well, apart from the fact it can go 60 kilometers an hour as a heavy tank, of course it is got a brilliant kind of couple of round choices that you can pick with this vehicle. The first round being APCR, which is amazing for being able to hit people at long ranges with its 260 pen, means that most tanks that you come up against, I mean, you can pen with the standard rounds, but if you ever come across some of the tanks that, you know, can be a pain in the arse sometimes to be able to pen, and you got 340 heat pen, which is, how do you say, a little bit cracked when it comes to dealing with some of these vehicles. Point in case the Minotauro, an easy penetration if you manage to hit the lower plate or even kind of some of the frontal armor if you can manage to find it in its kind of weakest spots when it's angling, etc. So yeah, I mean, so far no damage taken in this vehicle and been able to pick up 3.6k. I literally said myself, no damage taken as he gets hit. But either way, first time overextending this vehicle to be able to get hit. Well, with this vehicle being in this position, it's hiding the lower plate. When you hide the lower plate in this thing, can be a little bit of a pain because you have to try and hit the minuscule cupola that you can see right here. And I mean, trying to hit that thing is almost an impossible task unless you're face hugging it, and even then it can be a bit of a pain. But a lucky shot there against the Minotauro into the upper plate rather than that lower plate, meaning he gets away scot-free without taking any damage. Goes for the track on the Minotauro as the STI is actually pushing up, and of course the STI thinking that he has armor, but you're not quite the Russian tank that this one is. Now, the STI is going to find it a little bit difficult because his turret certainly doesn't hold up, and when you have that gigantic cupola, yeah, not particularly too great. But now this is the point at which his team are starting to try and fly away, and he's able to try and hold against all four of these tanks. Most of them actually on a decent amount of hit points, bar the Minotauro, who he's already been farming this entire game. So 5.5k damage done, and now it's just a case of trying to angle as much as possible, use that armor against things like the E100 to be able to bounce some of their rounds, and really have to basically go for those bounces if you have any chance at being able to deal with some of these vehicles. So STRV gets pumped, and of course now it's time to try and deal with the E100 at the same time as keeping an eye out, because there is a wild Waffenträger E100 YOLOing through the middle to try and get over to this flank. Now, the game is not looking all too good. I mean, they're down by 6,000 hit points, but don't worry, because this comeback is about to come on. Now, what you'll notice in this point of the battle, it is of course down by about 4,500 hit points now, but the enemy tanks have actually pushed through their base to be able to encircle them, and it's causing that sausage sandwich, which pretty sure nobody likes to be a part of. One in front, one behind. Yeah, it's not a pleasant experience. But what you'll find here is, of course, not just one in front or one behind. It's actually 3 in front, 3 behind. So you're kind of in that bad situation as it starts off. But with this game being pretty clutch, he needs to make a move, and unfortunately doesn't manage to pen the STRV. I'd also be cacking my pants at this point, not really aiming 100% when I'm trying to deal with damage to some of these boys. But rather than stopping and trying to deal with the E100 and stop and try and move around the STRV, he actually doesn't stop and comes around to try and deal with the STI. Now, when he can remove some of these low health vehicles, it's what you want to do. the Shah Future in their base seems to be looking at someone else. Now, we'll find out whether that was the case as we go through this replay. But with the E100 now closing in and potentially a one-shot... Wait, E100? You do realise you're meant to actually look with your turret facing the opponent. Kinda looking like a bit of a bot, if I'm going to be honest, and of course manages to finish him off. But there is still quite a bit of hit points left on the enemy team, mainly in the artillery, so you don't have to deal with those. But this flank has been cleaned up very well, and he's managed to pick up 9,000 damage. Let's see how the game actually ends up faring in the later stages. Now, with the Centurion Action X firing at his teammate in the E4, he's able to shut him down without risking being hit. And when you're on this amount of hit points, it's only going to take 2 rounds from basically anyone in the game left to finish you off. And when there's a Shah Future and of course there's an STRV that's going to be camping in the base, you really do have to push. And once more, not just pushing because the hit points are low and managing to really try and deal with these guys, they're capping the base because cap circles. Great fun for everyone involved, but the STRV not actually looking the right way, and a lovely HE round into the back of the STRV shuts him down. But if you notice, there's only 1 round left in this game in his vehicle. Now, the 2128 actually ends up finishing off the E4, which means it's got a bit of a risky situation. There's a AMX 1390 on his team, so should be able to support whatever push he's going for. But there is still that Shah Future, and the main threat, I guess, when it comes to the Shah is if he manages to get around the side of him. But if you'll notice at the beginning, he didn't seem to be too aware, and that's because Mr. Shah was, how do we say, not entirely enjoying his experience of going for dinner and probably coming back to realise that his team have lost. Now the Shah Future 4 is about to be rammed, but with only no shells left, he's got to try and ram the artillery piece too. But with an AMX 1390 coming in, he should be quite easy to finish off that 212A, what you would have thought. And it appears like he does manage to do it. So a really great round showcasing how this tank can just be a block to the opponent. So let's jump into the next one where it can be more aggressive and actually take the fight to the opponents. Now of course, being in a vehicle that is basically disgusting, he is well ahead of all of the other heavy tanks in this game, which allows him to take early game positions against some of the mediums who will also be trying to make aggressive pushes. And when you're in a tank that can actually bounce rounds as a heavy, then yeah, I mean, dealing with mediums can be quite easy. Now the damage per minute disparity between you and some of the top tier 10 mediums is of course quite big, but when you have 440 alpha and you can bounce some of those rounds, then yeah, you can come away quite well. And there's an AMX 50B who's managed to find himself pushing up to the corner. Didn't actually manage to spot him, so I guess the 50B may have been running turbo or something additional to actually get him into place that quickly. But at this point, it's really about trying to avoid being hit by this 50B. So he, instead of kind of playing in the same position, he actually moves over here, which allows him to put a rock in between him and the opponents. Now, with these 340 heat pen rounds, the VZ55 is struggling quite hard, and that's because the VZ, although it has the spaced armor blockers, it does have a pretty terrible cupola. Now, unfortunately, he's actually able to be shot at there and penned, and he's lost quite a bit of hit points, but don't worry because he doesn't lose much more within this game. And like we said at the beginning of the game, the 279E used to be the king of tier 10, or one of the kings, I guess, one of the more annoying vehicles to come up against. But with the 340 heat and of course this tank actually being able to bounce a few rounds, the 279E with its nerfed capabilities is going to be a bit more balanced to be able to deal with. But the E100 thinking that he can actually be able to side scrape here, or at least attempt to kind of block around, showcasing his turret directly towards the opponent. Not a great idea, I wouldn't recommend. And of course you want to try and over angle the turret and then kind of snap when you think the opponent is going to actually try and fire, rather than sitting there looking directly at the opponent. Now the 260's hit points are looking absolutely garbage at this point. I mean, he's down to what, like just over 800 within this game, so he is a 2-shot for most tanks that he'll be facing, which is, yeah, not ideal. But this is where this player decides to ramp it up and stop playing and trading with opponents and really starts dealing a ton of damage singling them out and being able to rinse them of all of their hit points, starting off with this E100. Just watch how he waits for opponents to make the misplays using the third person camera to zoom out and check where they're looking and stuff like that, and he's able to poke around a lot of these corners, making sure to track when people are making reloads or misplays like this VZ, and it's just easy damage at this point. It's something you should be doing in all your games regardless of if you're playing in a broken tank like this, and probably more so if you're playing in a mediocre tank. You want to be really keeping an eye on what your opponents are doing using third person, and of course just poking out when you know they've fired or something like that and they can't deal any damage to you. It is the ultimate in how you're supposed to trade on World of Tanks. So the UDES on the enemy team comes swathing out in front of him, giving him the hull armor, which is a fantastic play by the UDES. I wouldn't see why you would never want to do that ever. Now, this is not good. He's down to 475 hit points, but rather than stopping on that area, he actually tries to pull back all of the way, and you can do that in this tank. This speed allows it to be able to do that, and really he wants to get far enough away to defend this flank, because at the end of the day it's looking like it's a fat L within this game, and it's going to end up pretty badly. I mean, he's done 3.5k, which isn't awful, but you know, when you're in this sort of tank you'd be wanting to do a lot more. But there's a reason why I'm showcasing this on this video, and it's because he's able to farm up some of the aggressive approaching vehicles using the okay accuracy. I mean, it's nothing absolutely outrageous by any means. You've got 0.34 dispersion. I mean, it's very good for a heavy tank, and with 440 alpha it feels kind of okay, and when you start using bond equipment in this tank you can get the accuracy down quite a bit, and it just makes it a hell of a lot better. But of course the enemy tanks now throwing themselves away in the typical push that people do on El Halluf. Have no idea why people try and push down this area. You should always be going into D2 and then moving into E2 to be able to push on this side as you avoid being hit. And often, you know, the people that may have been camping in the ridges at J6 on this team, so the friendly team on this side, would have been sitting there or been taken out, etc. So you can make that push quite easily, and it saves you a ton of hit points in your own games. Now, given that he's down by 5,000 hit points, I'm pretty sure the opponents are making some questionable plays trying to get the damage out of all of them, but unfortunately for them, this player isn't a complete bot. He's got 2 marks in the 260, knows what he's doing to a degree, and of course is just sat here farming him up, letting them push round and dealing damage when he knows that they're pushing. So although it looks like this is getting very, very bad in that, you know, the tanks that are all left seem to have a decent amount of hit points, with things like a Jaeger with a 140 that's actually behind him. Oh, it's not looking good. But he's been able to focus on this IS-4, who's looking at where he is, trying to get a bit of damage. He pulls back behind the ridge to be able to block a artillery round from being able to stun him or do any potential artillery things. And so now he's got to try and deal with this 140, probably the biggest threat at this moment in time, because he can use mobility to get around the side of the 260 and start dealing with him from there. And when you're in this sort of tank, you don't want to be getting kind of covered from all sorts of angles, so he has to make a bit of a play here to be able to come out with this alive. Oh dear, Mr. Jaegeru, of course, thinking that he can somehow deal with our boy in the 260. Now, Jaegeru obviously letting him reload, but there's a 140 coming. So what does he do? He tries to deal with the Jaegeru as he's going to finish him off in one hit. The 140 then doesn't realise that, it wouldn't be a good idea to ram the 260. I'm in a little Soviet medium. Questionable at very, very minor levels. And then the FV also comes in, misses his shell, and now he doesn't have a fully traversable turret. Oh, what a shame. I guess the 4005 is going to be finding himself a little bit, but he tries to make a bit of a play. Now, the misplay that he makes here is not actually just going straight into the red line, where he would have been able to actually just turn around, and instead just kind of fumbles this one, as I'm sure he's probably very angry at. But he minorly escapes this guy, manages to get around another one, and then finishes him off to pick up 9,000 damage. Now he's just left against 2 artillery who have just fired, and so he can amble his way out of this situation. The enemy team really did throw this horrendously, and it's time to hunt down those artillery pieces. I guess this is why this tank is kind of a little bit broken. Now then, being on 18 hit points, it's not the best situation in the world, and the enemy artillery actually manages to spot him, but he notices that one of the artillery pieces is near his base, or at least in like H6, 7, 8 area, who managed to get a shot into him. So the artillery actually have a little bit of a crossfire, but what he does here is, rather than kind of sit around hoping that the enemy tanks are going to be able to I guess get a free shot into him, maybe blind fire him, he decides to pull up this ridge, manages to try and spot the GW E100, goes for the shot, and RNG says yes this time and manages to hit the GW100. But there's still 3 shots that he needs to do in this game to finish off all of the artillery, or potentially maybe he high rolls one of the other artillery in the object 261 to finish him off. Now, in this sort of situation, when you've had 7 kills and you're basically carrying the game super hard, you'd probably be wanting to hunt down those last pieces of artillery to win the game. And so as he makes his way over to the enemy base, he actually spots the 261 who's made it up to the corner. Can he manage to finish him off? Yes, he does in 1 shell, and that was actually a slight high roll, an extra 20 damage. RNG saying yes again, and then the enemy GW100 is also there as he shuts him down with a very slim shot with another. RNG says yes, and there you go, an amazing result again, picking up over 10,000 damage in one of the weirdest situations I think I've seen in a while. But oh dear, that is not the only thing that we're going to see today. Now, and that is because this 260 is going to take the fight into the town. The first thing he does is shoot down this wall that was right in front of him to be able to get the shots on some of the people that are going to be crossing, and that's exactly what he tries to do with the first round. Now, it doesn't go out all too well, but this is a position you could use in your own games if you want to get some free shots at the beginning of the game, and that's because people always cross here, getting very unlucky with some of these rounds not being able to pen, but you know, it is what it is. You try what you try, and unfortunately it didn't work. But maybe the last one, of the 3rd time's a charm, manages to actually get a shot into the T110E4, but there is a lot of vehicles actually moving over here, and it could potentially be a little bit of a problem. But as he comes around, he deals a shot through the wall. As you know, when you're using these APCR rounds, you can go through walls, etc., to be able to deal damage, which is what you want to do. Now, he notices that one of the walls gets knocked down over there, so maybe someone's going to try and come around. He's just poking this corner, making sure that he can get any shots that he can, because in clutch situations like this, you need to really be there to pull the trigger when the opponents make mistakes. Otherwise, you're going to end up losing, and it's the key thing about being, I guess, a super unicum in a game like this. So with the Rinoceronte sitting there trying to farm, it gives him time enough to actually try and get another shot into him, and uh-oh, the Rinoceronte moves out into his shot, and there you go, the Rinoceronte losing over half of his hit points by making a big misplay, which was pounced on by the 260, and this tank is fantastic at being able to do that when it has about a 9-second reload when you're using all of the equipment to boost up your reload, apart from maybe ventilation or something like that. But with this tank being in its state that it's currently in, you can see here he manages to finish off that Rinoceronte as he pokes again in the same position. Not sure he was kind of well clued in what was about to happen. The enemy 60 TPs are working in a platoon. As you'll see, the 260 is in a platoon with a 50B. Now they're going to work together in this game to try and pull it off against the enemy 60 TP platoon. And you're seeing here the 60 TPs were trying to deal damage together, but with the good accuracy that this tank actually gets, or relatively good, he's able to hit this 777/2 as he pulls back behind the corner, which probably wouldn't be the case in a lot of your heavies. Now what he does here is of course using the 3rd-person camera to try and see where the opponents are going to be coming from, and there he manages to find the 60 TP again, who's really not having fun against this guy, and he places one into the turret ring, or you know, the weak point of the 60 TP, which is basically below the turret ring where it rounds off and is basically flat. He's trying to go for it again, unfortunately not able to deal it this time, but I mean, he can just sit here and farm up the 60 TP. You can see here that is exactly the spot, or just a bit to the right. Unfortunately 60 TP goes forward as he shoots, so yeah, bounces that one, but it's a position that you can use on that tank to really take it out. And of course he's trying to go again, and there you go, he hits it. So he's been able to pick up 3.6k without taking a single bit of hit point, and in this game he's gonna need those hit points to come away with a win, because him and his teammate are kind of trying to maintain this position as the majority of their team, or the ones that are left, are sat in the hill area, but the majority of the enemy tanks are actually over on this flank and pretty much on most of their hit points, bar maybe a couple of the 60 TPs and some of the TVs that are over here. So he's really having to work hard for the damage here, making sure not to lose any silly hit points, and you definitely don't want to be taking 60 TP hits here, but he places a lovely one directly into the weak point of the 60 TP, which is brilliant. And it's just a case of working these ridges, trying to deal as much damage, so just watch what happens. Now the enemy 60 TP, the one that was on full health and hasn't been farmed, has obviously very triggered that his friend has been getting absolutely beasted by this tank, so he decides he's going to give it a go and ends up losing 2 shots to just deal 1 after YOLOing him. But if you're looking at the mini-map, it's not looking very good right now, and yeah, if I was in this situation, I'd probably be thinking, yeah, my luck is about to come to an end. I'm going to be going back to the garage where I belong in not too long. But don't worry, because this player doesn't believe he should be in the garage, and yeah, I believe that as well, because he's about to pull off an absolute miracle to not only deal enough damage to the enemy team to finish some of them off, but also be able to come back from this game even if it looks like they are kind of going to be in a bit of a poor situation here. And a lovely shot into the Object 777/2 manages to finish him off, but now it's the age-old thing of who pokes first, who's going to actually spot for the team, because although he's very close to the enemy team, he is of course on a very low amount of hit points and could potentially be high rolled by a 60 TP to be able to finish him off. But of course he's trying to go for that weak point, and bye bye Mr. 60 TP, it's not your day today. You and your teammate have been absolutely farmed, and the T-54 manages to get a bit lucky with that last one. The 60 TP comes out all of the way. He's of course finding it difficult to get a shot down onto the upper plate or lower plate of this 260. It delays his shot, fires straight into the mantlet, which is yeah, not particularly the best idea, and then yeah, takes one in return, and his teammate are actually supporting him here. His platoon mate in general is also coming in to support with the 50B. Although that tank does not have any armor, it's a real nice one to clean up flanks, and that's exactly what they're going to do here. 60 TP, obviously not getting the memo, decides to pull out again, and obviously doesn't aim fully into the 260's lower plate or his armor, and yeah, giving him just 3 shots of damage here. Now the enemy 50B actually manages to land a shot, meaning that he is definitely a one-shot for quite a few vehicles on the enemy team, so he has to be a little bit careful. The 60 TP YOLO wagons cannot actually hit him again here, and unfortunately for the 60 TP, he doesn't manage to hit his friend in the 50B. A lot of you know, action going on in this game. So at this point, the 50B has enough hit points to try and push. The enemy 50B is actually reloading at this point. There's still a Foch 155 who could pull up a bit of a worldie here if he manages to finish off both of them. But he has to be a little bit careful. This 50B is now maybe reloaded, but it doesn't matter because he finishes him off for 430. Picking up 9.4 thousand damage so far, and there is still 7,000 damage left in the game. And the friendly team on the other flank still haven't dealt with the T-54 from 5 minutes ago, but with the Foch 155 kind of pulling out, his teammate takes a shot there, which I don't know whether was intentional, just so that the 260 doesn't actually die here, which it might have been the case, just so that maybe he could get a little bit more damage, have one of those crazy results, and of course very good platoon play there, I guess, from that sort of standpoint. But they are both now a one-shot for both of these vehicles, whether that's the Waffle Alpha Panzer IV or the Foch 155. Unfortunately, Foch manages to get a little shot there into his teammate. The Foch has a really long intricate reload on the 155, so he should be able to actually poke and deal damage to this guy if he overcommits. But because he's overcommitting, yeah, you do realise there's another direction I can come from when I'm playing in the 60 TP. Yeah, doesn't even manage to go for the Waffle. He actually rams the Waffle for a bit of damage, and oh, looks like he's coming in again to ram this guy, and nice little bit of tract assist as well. So really nice to see this actually working so far, and with a 21k W8 game, I'm pretty sure he's very happy, dealing over 10k damage and picking up 4,200 assists. I mean, that in itself is very nice as well. So a 14,000 combined damage game is just superb, and was just a pleasure to watch. And with him being on 8 kills, can he manage to finish off the last one? Yes, he can, picking up 9 kills within this game in one of the most outrageous vehicles that is in World of Tanks when it's played correctly. And of course, you can get it in the game as long as you're good enough to complete some of the challenges. Hopefully you are. And of course, beware, because if you underestimate this tank, you are going to get sent back to the garage like the 20 opponents in this game. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to check out this one on screen if you want some more, and I'll see you there. Goodbye.